The morning sun rose over New Busan like it had for the past 30 years. Golden light spread across the green fields where crops grew tall and healthy. The air smelled of fresh earth and growing plants. Children's laughter echoed from the school playground as they ran and played before classes started. Hyunwoo stood on his office balcony, watching the peaceful scene below. As the colony administrator, he had seen this place grow from a small outpost to a thriving city of 50,000 people. 3 generations of families now called this planet home. Their grandparents had come here with nothing but hope and determination. Now their grandchildren ran through streets lined with trees and played in parks filled with flowers. The colony was built in the Korean style, with curved roofs and stone pathways. Gardens bloomed everywhere, mixing earth flowers with native plants that had learned to grow alongside human crops. The harmony between old and new made Hyunwoo proud every day. This was what human expansion should look like: peaceful, respectful, and beautiful. Ginny knocked on his office door and entered with her morning report. As the chief communications officer, she kept New Busan connected to the rest of human space. Her desk was covered with quantum relay equipment that could send messages across the galaxy in seconds. "Good morning, Administrator," she said with a bright smile. "All systems are working perfectly." Earth sent their weekly check-in message. "They're very happy with our agricultural reports. Our rice yields are 30% higher than last quarter." Hyunwoo nodded with satisfaction. New Busan had become famous throughout human space for its farming success. They had learned to grow earth crops in alien soil, creating new farming methods that other colonies copied. Scientists came from across the galaxy to study their techniques. "Any word from the mining survey team?" Hyunwoo asked. "They found another rare earth deposit in the northern mountains," Jin-ae replied. "But they recommend we leave it alone for now. The environmental impact study shows it might affect the river system that feeds our main agricultural areas." This was typical of New Busan's approach. They could have become rich from mining, but they chose to protect their environment instead. The colonists believed in building something that would last for centuries, not quick profits that would destroy their home. Tai Min arrived for their daily security briefing. As head of colonial defense, he commanded a small force of security officers who mainly dealt with minor disputes and helped during emergencies. New Busan had never faced any serious threats. The Kepler 442 system was far from any known hostile forces, and the colony had good relationships with the few alien traders who occasionally visited. "Everything quiet as usual," Tai Min reported. "We had one small argument between neighbors about property lines, but they worked it out themselves. The emergency drill last week went well. All evacuation procedures completed in under 2 hours." Hyunwoo sometimes wondered if they even needed security forces. The colonists were peaceful people who had come here to build better lives. Crime was almost unknown. The biggest problems were usually lost children or farm animals that wandered too far from home. At the local school, Sora and Woo Jin sat in their history class learning about Earth. Their teacher, an elderly woman named Ms. Park, showed them pictures of Seoul and Busan from before the space age. The children listened with wide eyes as she described cities with millions of people and oceans that stretched beyond the horizon. "Will we ever see Earth?" Sora asked. "Maybe someday," Ms. Park replied. "But remember, this is your home now. Your families came here to build something new and beautiful. You are the future of humanity among the stars." Sora looked out the window at the green fields and distant mountains. She had been born here, like most of the children her age. Earth was just a story to them, but New Busan was real. This was where they belonged. During lunch break, the children played games that mixed Korean traditions with new ones they had invented. They ran through gardens where earth vegetables grew next to alien fruits that had been carefully tested for safety. Everything here was a blend of old and new, creating something unique in the galaxy. In the afternoon, Woo Jin helped his father in their family's greenhouse. They grew special Korean peppers that had been adapted to the local soil. The peppers were used to make kimchi that tasted almost exactly like the kind their ancestors had eaten on Earth. Preserving these traditions was important to the colonists. They wanted to remain human while building something new. The greenhouse was full of the humid smell of growing plants and rich soil. Woo Jin loved working here with his hands in the earth. He felt connected to all the farmers who had come before him, stretching back to the earliest days of human civilization. "Someday this will all be yours," his father said, gesturing at the rows of healthy plants. You'll teach your own children how to grow food and take care of the land. That's how we build a future that lasts. As evening approached, families gathered in the town center for their weekly community meeting. They discussed plans for a new school, debated whether to expand the spaceport, and listened to reports from various committees. Democracy was alive and well on New Busan. Every voice mattered in decisions about their shared future. Hyunwoo watched the meeting with satisfaction. These people had built something remarkable here. They had proven that humans could expand across the galaxy without violence or destruction. They could create homes that honored both their past and their future. Later that night, Jin-A sent her daily report to Earth. She included updates on population growth, agricultural success, and cultural activities. New Busan was a model colony that other human settlements tried to copy. They had shown that peaceful expansion was possible. The stars shone brightly over New Busan as the colonists went to sleep in their comfortable homes. Children dreamed of tomorrow's adventures while their parents planned for the future. The night was peaceful and quiet, filled with the sounds of a healthy, living world. None of them knew that tomorrow would bring visitors from the stars. None of them suspected that their peaceful life was about to end forever. They slept soundly, trusting in the safety they had built and the protection of the larger human community. New Busan was humanity's dream made real, a place where people could live in harmony with nature and each other. But dreams, no matter how beautiful, can become nightmares in an instant. The ships appeared without warning. Jin-A was drinking her morning coffee when every alarm in the communications center started screaming at once. Her quantum relay screens lit up with incoming signals from the automated defense satellites that watched the edge of their solar system. What she saw made her hands shake so badly she dropped her cup. 12 massive alien warships hung in space just outside the orbit of the system's outer planet. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel Jin-A had ever seen. They were dark and angular, covered in weapon ports that looked like the eyes of hungry predators. The ships moved in perfect formation like sharks circling their prey. Administrator Hyunwoo to communications immediately. Jin-A spoke into her emergency communicator. Her voice cracked with fear, but she forced herself to stay calm. The colony's survival might depend on how well she did her job in the next few hours. Hyunwoo arrived within minutes, still buttoning his shirt. Taemin was right behind him, already wearing his security uniform and carrying his sidearm. The three of them stared at the screen showing the alien fleet in horrified silence. "Have they made any contact?" Hyunwoo asked quietly. "Not yet," Jin-A replied, "but they're scanning our planet. I can detect their sensor sweeps. They know we're here." The waiting was the worst part. For 2 hours, the alien ships just sat there, studying New Busan like scientists examining insects under a microscope. The colonists went about their daily business, unaware that death waited just beyond their sky. Hyunwoo decided not to announce the situation until he knew more. No point in causing panic if the aliens turned out to be peaceful. Then the message came. The transmission cut through every communication channel on the planet simultaneously. The alien voice was translated by universal language protocols, but the meaning was crystal clear. The speaker identified himself as Admiral Cathara of the Vorth Empire. "Attention, human settlers," the voice said with cold authority. "You are trespassing in Vorth space. This system belongs to us by right of conquest. You have 72 hours to evacuate your colony completely. Any humans remaining after that time will be considered hostile invaders and dealt with accordingly." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving silence in the communications center. 72 hours? Taemin said in disbelief. To evacuate 50,000 people? That's impossible even if we had enough ships, which we don't. Hyunwoo's mind raced through their options. New Busan had only a few small transport ships used for cargo runs to nearby systems. Even working constantly, they could maybe evacuate 1,000 people in 3 days. The colony had been built to be permanent. Nobody had ever planned for a complete emergency evacuation. Jin-A opened a channel to their flagship, Hyunwoo ordered. "I need to talk to this Admiral Cathara." The response came quickly. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien command ship. Admiral Cathara stood in the center, surrounded by her officers. She was tall and reptilian, with dark scales and yellow eyes that showed no emotion at all. Her uniform was covered with weapons and symbols of rank. "I am Administrator Hyunwoo of New Busan Colony," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. We received your message, but I'm afraid there's been some mistake. This system has been legally settled by humans under galactic law. We have proper documentation of our claim. Admiral Cathera's laugh was like the hiss of an angry snake. Your human laws mean nothing to the Vorth Empire. We take what we want, and we want this system. Your weak species has been expanding too quickly for our liking. It's time someone taught you about real power. But we're not soldiers, Hyunwoo protested. This is a peaceful agricultural colony. We have families here, children. Surely we can reach some kind of agreement. The Vorth do not make agreements with inferior species, Kythera replied coldly. You have your warning. 72 hours. Use that time wisely. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo stared at the blank screen, feeling helpless and angry. These aliens weren't interested in negotiation or compromise. They wanted the humans gone, and they didn't care how many innocent people might die in the process. Mi Young, the colony's chief translator and diplomatic officer, had been listening to recordings of the alien transmission. She entered the communications center with a grim expression on her face. I've been analyzing their language patterns, she said. The Vorth Empire appears to be a military dictatorship that settles disputes through force. They literally cannot understand why we would expect them to honor existing treaties or respect our right to be here. Can we fight them? Taemin asked, though he already knew the answer. With what? Hyunwoo replied bitterly. We have a dozen security officers with small arms and a few maintenance robots. They have 12 warships with enough firepower to turn our planet into glass. Jin'e was already working at her station, trying to establish contact with Earth. I'm sending an emergency message to the Defense Force, she said. Maybe they can send help. Earth is 6 days away at maximum speed, Hyunwoo pointed out. Even if they left immediately, which they won't, they'd never get here in time. As the hours passed, the situation became increasingly desperate. Hyunwoo called an emergency meeting of all department heads and community leaders. When he explained the situation, the room erupted in angry voices and desperate suggestions. Some wanted to fight. Others insisted they should try to negotiate. A few suggested hiding in the mountains until help arrived, but everyone knew the truth. New Busan was doomed. Jin'e worked frantically to compose a message that would reach Earth before the end. She knew it would be the colony's last transmission, their final goodbye to the rest of humanity. She wrote carefully, choosing each word to honor the 50,000 people who were about to die. New Busan under attack, she began. Hostile alien force demanding immediate evacuation. 50,000 souls. 3 generations of families. Remember us. Remember what they did here. Make them pay. As the deadline approached, families gathered in their homes to spend their last hours together. Sora held her mother's hand while her father read stories from Earth. Woo-jin helped his parents in their greenhouse one last time, harvesting peppers they would never taste. Some colonists tried to run to the mountains or hide in underground shelters. Others stood defiantly in the town square, refusing to cower before alien threats. But most simply waited with quiet dignity, surrounded by the people they loved in the place they had built with their own hands. Admiral Cathera kept her word. Exactly 72 hours after her first message, the Vorth fleet opened fire. The orbital bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it was over, New Busan was nothing but radioactive ash scattered across a lifeless wasteland. 50,000 human beings had been murdered for the crime of existing in a place the Vorth Empire wanted. Admiral Cathera looked down at the destruction with satisfaction. Another world claimed for the Empire. Another inferior species taught their proper place in the galaxy. She ordered her fleet to move on to their next target, never thinking about the consequences of what she had just done. But Jin'e's message was already racing through space toward Earth, carrying news of the massacre to the rest of humanity. The Vorth had just made the biggest mistake in their species' history. They had killed human children. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Fleet Admiral Dong-hyun was reviewing routine patrol reports when Lieutenant Commander Park burst into his office without knocking. The young officer's face was white with shock, and his hands trembled as he handed over the quantum transmission data pad. Sir, you need to see this immediately, Park said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dong-hyun took the pad and began reading. With each word, his expression grew darker. By the time he finished, his knuckles were white where he gripped the device. 50,000 people. An entire colony. Men, women, and children murdered in cold blood by aliens who saw humans as nothing more than pests to be exterminated. Get President Hae-jin on the line, Dong-hyun said quietly. Emergency protocols. And wake up the entire Defense Council. We're going to war. Within an hour, the most powerful people in human space were gathered in the emergency war room deep beneath the capital. President Hae-jin sat at the head of the massive table, her usually calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled rage. Defense Minister Sung-ho paced back and forth, while intelligence chiefs and military commanders filled the other seats. Ladies and gentlemen, Ye-jin began, her voice deadly calm. 3 days ago, an alien species called the Vorth Empire murdered 50,000 human civilians. They destroyed our colony at New Busan without warning, without negotiation, and without mercy. They killed children who had never harmed anyone. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of air circulation systems. Every person present understood the gravity of the moment. This was humanity's first encounter with a truly hostile alien species, and it had resulted in genocide. What do we know about these Vorth? Admiral Dong-hyun asked. Intelligence Director Kim stood and activated the holographic display. Images of the alien ships filled the air above the table. Preliminary analysis suggests a militaristic empire with technology roughly equal to our own. They appear to believe in conquest through superior force. Our xenopsychology experts think they may be incapable of understanding diplomatic solutions. How many of them are there? Defense Minister Sung-ho demanded. Unknown, but intelligence suggests their empire spans at least 40 star systems. Total population could be anywhere from 10 to 50 billion individuals. President Hae-jin absorbed this information without changing expression. What are our military options? Dr. Young-soo, head of the Theoretical Weapons Division, cleared his throat nervously. He was a thin, elderly man who rarely spoke in these meetings. Madam President, I have something to show you. Project Sunbreaker. The holographic display changed to show classified technical diagrams. Complex mathematical equations covered the walls around them. Dr. Young-soo's hand shook slightly as he explained what they were looking at. For the past 20 years, we've been working on stellar engineering weapons. The theory is simple. If you can destabilize a star's fusion process, you can cause it to go nova. The practical application has been challenging. You're talking about destroying entire solar systems, President Hae-jin said slowly. Yes, Madam President. The stellar disruption array can cause any star to explode within hours of activation. Everything within 5 light years would be completely sterilized. No survivors. No recovery. Total annihilation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were discussing weapons that could kill billions of people and destroy entire worlds. Weapons that could end civilizations with the push of a button. The moral implications are staggering. Interior Minister Lee objected. We'd be committing genocide on a scale never before seen in galactic history. They committed genocide first, Admiral Dong-hyun replied coldly. They murdered our children. They declared war on our entire species when they destroyed New Busan. President Hae-jin studied the technical diagrams for a long moment. Dr. Young-soo, how many of these devices do we have? 3 functional units, Madam President. Each one is large enough to require a dreadnought-class vessel for transport. They've never been tested on an actual star. And you're confident they'll work? Dr. Young-soo nodded grimly. Computer simulations show a 97% success rate. The physics are sound. We can kill stars, Madam President. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Some argued for conventional military response. Others pushed for diplomatic solutions. But President Hae-jin had already made her decision. She had seen the images from New Busan. The radioactive craters where schools and hospitals had stood. The melted remains of playgrounds where children had laughed just days before. The Vorth Empire believes in the law of superior force, she said finally. Let's teach them what superior force really looks like. The orders went out immediately. Captain Ji-hoon of the dreadnought Incheon's Wrath received deployment instructions that made his blood run cold. His ship would carry one of the stellar disruption arrays into Vorth space. 200 other vessels would accompany him, forming the largest battle fleet in human history. But this wasn't a rescue mission or a liberation campaign. This was pure vengeance. Ji-hoon stood on his bridge, looking out at the fleet assembling around his ship. Every vessel was crewed by volunteers who understood they might not be coming home. The mission parameters were clear. Find the Vorth responsible for New Busan's destruction and make them pay in blood. Sir, his communications officer said quietly. We're receiving requests from thousands of additional volunteers. Every ship captain in the fleet wants to join the mission. Ji-hoon wasn't surprised. News of the New Busan massacre had spread throughout human space. The images of dead children and destroyed homes had filled every news broadcast. Humanity was united in a way it had never been before, united by grief and fury. Admiral Dong-hyun addressed the fleet before departure. His speech was broadcast to every human world, every space station, every ship in the far reaches of space. "The Vorth Empire believes that might makes right," he said, his voice carrying across the void between stars. "They think they can murder our families and face no consequences. They're about to learn that humans don't just get angry, we get even. They wanted to teach us about superior firepower. Let's give them a lesson they'll never forget." The fleet departed Earth 3 days after the massacre at New Busan. As the ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into hyperspace, President Hae-jin signed Executive Order 2387. The document was simple and direct. Any attack on human civilians by alien forces will be considered an act of war against all humanity. Response will be immediate, total, and without mercy. We will not negotiate with those who murder our children. The order was transmitted to every human colony and broadcast to all known alien civilizations. The message was clear: humanity had changed. The peaceful explorers and settlers were gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. Back on Earth, Dr. Young-soo worked frantically to prepare additional stellar disruption arrays. He knew that once humanity crossed this line, there would be no going back. They were about to become the most feared species in the galaxy. But as he thought about the children of New Busan, children who would never grow up, never fall in love, never have families of their own, he felt no regret. Some lines could not be crossed without consequences. The Vorth Empire had killed human children. Now they would learn what happened when you awakened humanity's capacity for total war. Retribution fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Vorth territory, like ghosts materializing from the void. 200 human warships spread across the darkness, their weapons powered and their crews ready for battle. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Inchen's Wrath, staring at the alien stars that would soon witness humanity's revenge. "Long-range sensors are picking up Vorth patrol ships," reported his tactical officer, Commander Nara. 3 light cruisers, approximately 50,000 kilometers from our position. They haven't detected us yet. Ji-hoon studied the tactical display with cold calculation. Intelligence suggested that Admiral Cathera's fleet was somewhere in this sector, probably moving between Vorth military bases after their successful conquest of New Busan. Finding them in the vastness of space would be challenging, but Ji-hoon had brought the best hunters in the human fleet. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "We begin with those patrol ships. I want prisoners for interrogation. Find out where Kithera is hiding." The attack was swift and brutal. Human fighters swarmed the Vorth patrol ships before they could send warning signals. The aliens fought bravely, but they had never faced an enemy like this before. Humans who had grown up playing video games and studying ancient military tactics proved to be natural space warriors. Commander Seok led the fighter assault personally, his squadron diving through Vorth defensive fire like they were dancing with death. His ship took multiple hits, but he pressed his attack until the enemy flagship's engines exploded in brilliant fire. "Target disabled," Seok reported over the communication channel. "Boarding teams, you're clear to go in." The captured Vorth officers were terrified. They had expected to face the same kind of civilized warfare their empire practiced. Formal challenges, honorable surrender, prisoner exchanges. Instead, they found themselves facing humans who seemed to care nothing for their own lives, who threw themselves into battle with a fury the Vorth had never encountered. Nara interrogated the prisoners using translation software and psychological pressure. The Vorth military culture was based on strict hierarchy and obedience to superiors. When faced with overwhelming force, they broke quickly. "Admiral Cathera's fleet is moving toward the Malthar system," one prisoner revealed. "She's reporting to the High Command about the successful cleansing of the human nest. She expects to receive commendation for her efficiency." Ji-hoon felt his anger burn even hotter. These aliens spoke of murdering 50,000 people like it was routine pest control. They felt no guilt, no remorse, no understanding of what they had done. They were about to learn. The hunt that followed became a legend throughout human space. Retribution fleet moved through Vorth territory like a plague of vengeance. destroying everything in their path. But this wasn't random destruction. Every target was carefully chosen to inflict maximum psychological damage on the enemy. Pilot Minho led bombing runs against Vorth supply depots and communication stations. His squadron adopted the motto for New Busan, painting the words on their fighters in Korean characters that looked like tears of blood. They hit their targets with suicidal precision, often flying their damaged ships directly into enemy installations when their weapons ran out. The Vorth initially tried to respond with conventional tactics. They sent fleets to engage the human ships in formal battle, expecting to overwhelm them with superior numbers. But the humans fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Human captains rammed their ships into Vorth dreadnoughts, sacrificing themselves and their crews to destroy much larger vessels. Human pilots ejected from their fighters and detonated personal explosives against enemy hulls. Human marines boarded Vorth ships and fought hand-to-hand in the corridors, refusing to surrender even when outnumbered 10-1. What kind of species fights like this? One Vorth admiral asked his staff after losing an entire battle group to human kamikaze attacks. Their trading ships 1-for-1, sometimes 1-for-2. No rational military force would accept such losses. But the humans weren't being rational. They were being human. As word of the human rampage spread through Vorth space, panic began to set in. Military bases went silent. Entire star systems stopped reporting to high command. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were creating terror throughout the Empire. Captain Song Min of the Soul's Vengeance specialized in psychological warfare. He broadcast messages to Vorth worlds before attacking them, explaining exactly why the humans were coming and what would happen to anyone who had participated in the New Busan massacre. "We know who you are," his voice echoed across Vorth communication networks. "We know what you did to our children. We know where you live. Run if you want. Hide if you can. We will find you all." The effectiveness was devastating. Vorth civilians began fleeing their homes, clogging transportation networks and disrupting military logistics. Some Vorth officers deserted their posts rather than face the human fleet. The Empire's carefully maintained military discipline began to crumble, but Admiral Kythera remained confident. From her flagship at the edge of the Malthar system, she watched reports of human attacks with cold amusement. These inferior mammals were certainly more aggressive than expected, but they were still vastly outnumbered. Once she gathered enough ships, she would crush them completely. They're emotional creatures, she told her staff officers. They lack the discipline for sustained warfare. Their initial fury will burn out, and then we'll destroy them at our leisure. Nara's intelligence network was intercepting Vorth communications throughout their territory. She had learned to read their military codes and understand their tactical patterns. More importantly, she was beginning to understand their psychology. "They don't comprehend what we're doing," she reported to Ji-hoon during one of their strategy meetings. "They think this is just another territorial dispute that will end with some kind of negotiated settlement. They literally cannot understand that we intend to destroy them completely." "Good," Ji-hoon replied coldly. "Let them underestimate us until the end." The final pieces of the puzzle came together when human forces captured a Vorth supply convoy. Among the prisoners was a communications officer who carried updated fleet positions and movement orders. Nara spent hours extracting every detail from the aliens' computer systems. "Admiral Kythera is at Malthar Prime," she announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "She's meeting with the Vorth High Command to plan a massive counteroffensive. They're gathering their entire navy at their homeworld." The irony was perfect. The Vorth leadership was so confident in their superior numbers that they had concentrated their forces at the most important world in their empire. They thought they were preparing to crush the human fleet. Instead, they had gathered themselves in one place for humanity's final lesson. Ji-hoon studied the tactical data about Malthar Prime. 12 billion Vorth civilians lived on the planet's surface. Hundreds of military installations orbited the world. The system's star was a perfect G-class star, similar to Earth's sun, and it was about to die. "Signal the fleet," Ji-hoon ordered. "Set course for Malthar Prime. It's time to end this war." As Retribution Fleet jumped into hyperspace for the final time, Captain Songmin activated the fleet's communication array. His message was broadcast to every Vorth world, every alien civilization, every listening post in the galaxy. "This is Captain Songmin of the human vessel Soul's Vengeance. We are going to Malthar Prime to deliver justice for the children of New Busan. To the Vorth Empire. Your war is over. To the galaxy. Remember what happens when you murder human children. The message ended, but its meaning echoed across the stars. Humanity was no longer the peaceful species that had asked politely for permission to settle new worlds. They had become something far more dangerous. A species capable of ending entire civilizations when their families were threatened. The hunt was almost over. Soon Admiral Kithra would face the consequences of her actions, and the galaxy would learn to fear the sound of human engines approaching from the darkness between stars. Malthar Prime hung in space like a blue-green jewel. Beautiful and peaceful in the light of its yellow sun, cities covered the planet's surface in geometric patterns, home to 12 billion Vorth citizens who had never known the fear of war on their homeworld. Around the planet, hundreds of military ships moved in careful formations, the entire might of the Vorth Navy gathered to crush the human threat once and for all. Admiral Kithara stood in the command center of her flagship, studying tactical displays that showed the approaching human fleet. 200 ships against nearly 1,000 Vorth vessels. The odds were almost 5-1 in her favor. She felt the satisfaction of a predator about to devour foolish prey. Inferior mammals, she hissed to her staff officers. They think their emotional fury can overcome our superior numbers and discipline. We'll crush them completely and use their broken ships as monuments to Vorth superiority. Supreme General Vrextar, commander of all Vorth military forces, stood beside her on the bridge. He was old even by Vorth standards, his scales gray with age and his eyes clouded by centuries of warfare. He had conquered 17 species for the Empire and had never known defeat. Why do these humans continue fighting? He asked, genuinely puzzled. We destroyed one of their minor colonies as a demonstration of power. Any rational species would have negotiated for peace by now. Admiral Kythera's tongue flicked out to taste the air, a gesture of contempt. They're emotional creatures, Supreme General. They lack the cold logic that makes us superior. But emotions burn out quickly. Once we destroy their fleet, they'll accept their proper place as our servants. Neither of them understood that they were dealing with a species that would rather die than submit to those who murdered their children. Retribution fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Malthar system. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Inchin's Wrath, looking at the massive Vorth fleet with cold calculation. Behind him, the stellar disruption array hummed with barely contained power. Dr. Young-soo had worked for 3 days straight to ensure the weapon was ready for deployment. Sir, Nara reported from her intelligence station, I'm detecting massive Vorth fleet concentrations around the planet. Nearly their entire navy is here. They're moving to surround us. Perfect, Ji-hoon replied quietly. Open a channel to their flagship. The communication link activated, showing Admiral Kithara's reptilian face on the main screen. Her yellow eyes glowed with confident malice as she looked at the human captain who had caused so much trouble for her empire. I am Captain Ji-hoon of the human vessel Inchin's Wrath, he said calmly. I'm here to discuss terms for your surrender. Kithara's laugh was like breaking glass. Surrender? You're outnumbered 5-1, mammal. Your pathetic fleet will be space debris within the hour. I'm not talking about my surrender, Ji-hoon replied. I'm talking about yours. You murdered 50,000 human civilians at New Busan, including children. Give yourself up for trial, and your planet might survive the next 6 hours. The Vorth Admiral's amusement turned to rage. You dare threaten the Vorth homeworld? We have ruled this sector for 1,000 years. Your weak species should be grateful we allow you to exist at all. You allowed our children to exist, Ji-hoon said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. Now they're dead, and so are you. He cut the communication link and turned to his weapons officer. Prepare the stellar disruption array. Target the sun. Dr. Yoonji, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, had been studying captured Vorth prisoners during their journey to Malthar Prime. Her research had revealed something important about their enemy's psychology. She approached Ji-hoon with her findings as the fleet prepared for battle. Captain, I need to tell you something about the Vorth, she said urgently. They're evolutionarily young compared to humans. Their species has only been spacefaring for about 2,000 years. They've never faced extinction-level warfare. What does that mean? Ji-hoon asked. They literally cannot comprehend the concept of mutually assured destruction. In their minds, warfare is about conquest and expansion, not about ending civilizations. They think you're bluffing about destroying their star. Ji-hoon absorbed this information with grim understanding. The Vorth weren't evil in the way humans understood evil. They were simply incapable of imagining that another species would choose annihilation over surrender. They had never met humans before. The battle began as the Vorth fleet moved to encircle the human ships. Admiral Cathara expected a conventional engagement where superior numbers would ensure victory. Instead, she got her first lesson in human desperation. Commander Seok led the first wave of attacks, his fighters diving straight into the heart of the Vorth formation. Instead of trying to preserve their ships, the human pilots flew directly into enemy vessels, detonating their craft against Vorth hulls. Each fighter took out ships 10 times its size. "What are they doing?" Frextar demanded as he watched human fighters commit suicide runs against his dreadnoughts. No rational pilot would sacrifice himself for such small tactical gains. But the humans weren't being rational. They were being human. Captain Songmin Sol's Vengeance led a squadron of destroyers against the Vorth left flank. When his ship's engines were damaged by enemy fire, he didn't retreat for repairs. Instead, he rammed his vessel directly into a Vorth command ship, taking both vessels down in a massive explosion. The psychological effect was devastating. Vorth captains began to hesitate, afraid that any human ship they approached might suddenly turn into a guided missile. The careful formations that were supposed to surround and destroy the human fleet began to break apart. Nara worked frantically at her communication station, broadcasting messages to the Vorth fleet and the planet below. She wanted everyone to understand exactly what was about to happen and why. "People of Malthar Prime," her voice echoed across the planet's communication networks, "your military leaders murdered 50,000 human civilians, including children. We offered them a chance to surrender and face justice. They refused. In 60 minutes, your star will explode. This is the price of killing human children." Panic spread across the planet like wildfire. 12 billion Vorth civilians looked up at their yellow sun with sudden terror, finally understanding that the humans were serious about destroying everything they had ever known. Transportation systems collapsed as millions tried to flee to the outer system. But there was nowhere to run. Admiral Cathara watched her perfectly planned battle disintegrate into chaos. Human ships were ramming her vessels faster than she could replace them. Worse, her own captains were beginning to pull back, afraid of the suicidal human tactics. "All ships, advance immediately," she commanded over the fleet communication network. "Destroy the human flagship before they can activate whatever weapon they're threatening us with." But it was already too late. Dr. Youngsu gave Ji-hoon a solemn nod from the Stellar Disruption Array control station. "Array is fully charged and targeted, Captain. Ready to fire on your command." Ji-hoon looked out at the beautiful blue planet where billions of innocent civilians lived their daily lives. Many of them had probably never even heard of humans before today. They didn't deserve to die for their leaders' crimes. But the children of New Busan hadn't deserved to die either. "Fire," he said quietly. The Stellar Disruption Array unleashed its power. Into the heart of Malthar's sun, exotic particles flooded the star's fusion core, destabilizing the delicate balance that had kept it burning for billions of years. Deep within the stellar furnace, fusion processes began to accelerate beyond control. The effect wasn't immediately visible. For several minutes, the star continued to burn normally while death spread through its core like cancer. Then the first gravitational waves began rippling outward, distorting space-time itself. "Gravitational anomalies detected in the primary star," Nara reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Stellar collapse has begun. Estimated time to nova, 43 minutes. Admiral Cathara felt the gravitational waves shake her flagship and finally understood that the humans hadn't been bluffing. These mammals were actually going to destroy the Vorth homeworld and everyone on it, including themselves. "Cease fire," she screamed over the communication networks. "All ships cease fire. We surrender. We surrender." But Captain Ji-hoon's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every Vorth in the system could hear humanity's final judgment. "You had your chance to surrender," he said with cold finality. "You chose to murder our children instead. Now you get to learn what human justice looks like." As the star began its death spiral toward nova, both fleets stopped fighting and simply watched in stunned silence. The Vorth had finally met a species more dangerous than themselves, a species willing to commit suicide rather than let the murder of their children go unpunished. The countdown to annihilation had begun.